Explain coming up.
With snowmelt runoff raging in our creeks, it seemed unlikely that Salt Lake City would avoid flooding. So far it has. Straight ahead, what the flood potential looks like right now.
KSL Live at 5 starts now.
Good evening. As snow piled up in the mountains during the winter, communities prepared, concerned that there would be major flooding issues right about now.
This is a live look to City Creek from Chopper 5 tonight. Salt Lake City did not want a repeat of 1983 when floodwaters flowed down State Street. And right now, that same scenario appears unlikely.
Let's go to news specialist Jed Bull. He is live along the river right now. And Jed, what does the high water mean for the weeks ahead?
Well, City Creek is the creek that infamously flooded 40 years ago. Tonight, it's running high and fast, but right now, it's not expected to cause any serious flooding in the weeks or the days ahead. Right now, it looks like Salt Lake City will escape any major flooding from this record-breaking snow year. None of the 4 creeks that drain into the city are forecasted to get anywhere near flood stage before the snow runs out. Emigration Creek and Red Butte Creek are both declining, as you can see on those hydrographs. City Creek peaked about 5 days ago, but is expected to remain around 100 cubic feet per second, well below flood stage.
The weather's been really good to us, so we've been able to kind of maintain these high 70s, low 80s. We've had some cooler nights, so the weather has really regulated the flows quite well for us.
Several months ago, as the snowpack was growing and the Public Works Department was planning, they never could have expected that the runoff would turn out this well. A quick warm-up could still impact the runoff, but they tell me that flooding is unlikely. Coming up at 6 o'clock, I'll show you how the city managed flooding and actually managed the flows in Parley's Creek in order to minimize the flooding and maximize water storage. We'll have that part of the story for you tonight at 6:30. For Live at 5, I'm Jed Bull.
All right, thanks, Jed. Yes, that's best case scenario for sure.
Yep.
Well, this week, despite our historic snowpack this year, Salt Lake City appears to have averted a flooding disaster as it all melts. At 6:30, where things stand as we head into summer, and a look back 40 years on how things could have turned out. Next.
The snowmelt runoff is peaking in some creeks and it's spent in others. Straight ahead, what it looks like right now for the Salt Lake City creeks.
You're watching KSL News at 6.
Well, good evening. As record-breaking snowfall piled up in the mountains, our communities prepared, concerned that there could be major flooding issues this spring. Salt Lake City did not want a repeat of 1983 when floodwaters flowed down State Street.
As news specialist Jed Bull shows us, that now appears very unlikely.
City Creek is the creek that infamously flooded 40 years ago. Tonight, it's running high and fast, but it's not expected to go over its banks in the days or weeks ahead.
I feel like we're looking really good on all the 4 creeks that come through Salt Lake City.
Right now, it looks like Salt Lake City will escape any major flooding this record-breaking snow year. None of the 4 creeks that drain into the city are forecasted to get anywhere near flood stage before the snow runs out.
The weather's been really good to us, so we've been able to kind of maintain these high 70s, low 80s. We've had some cooler nights, so the weather has really regulated the flows quite well for us.
Emigration Creek and Red Butte Creek are both declining, as you can see. City Creek peaked several days ago, but is expected to remain well below flood stage. For a couple of months, the city has restricted releases from Little Dell and Mountain Dell reservoirs to manage the flow in Parley's Creek. Sugar House Pond also helped contain the high flows from Parley's Creek.
We released early on for the last couple of months to make space, and now we're actively filling that space right now, because with those reservoirs we have the two sides of the coin, where we're releasing water for flood control, but we want to store water for culinary water later in the season.
The pond is no longer overflowing, the road is open to cars, and the creek should stay within its banks.
We've been preparing for, it to come cold and then hot, and so we've had our preparations ready to do anything that might need to be done, but it's the weather's been really cooperative to us so far.
A quick, unforeseen warm-up could still impact the runoff, but right now, that does not look likely on these 4 creeks. For KSL-5 News, I'm Jed Bowl.
Jed, thank you. On this day, 40 years.
Whoever did this, though, Andrew, thank you.
Well, back in Utah, local officials are focusing on floodwaters. So far, the spring warm-up is behaving. Salt Lake City crews telling KSL today they will likely escape any major flooding this year. None of the 4 creeks that drain into the city are forecasted to get near flood stage before the mountain snow runs out. And it's not just the temperatures that created success here. Water managers say their targeted releases from reservoirs help them manage river flows the way they needed to. Well, just goes to show what an impact those infrastructure changes have had on the state.